course, it does present challenges, but it also presents opportunities. And I think that you can have the mainstream traditional medium, television. I mean,
radio.
We are on TV now, aren't we?
Yes.
And radio. And a lot of people consume their news that way or use it for entertainment. They like a big screen. But we've also got to be mindful that we make it accessible online, on mobile phone apps. And that's what the BBC is doing, for instance. You know, it's got this app where you can get your news, and obviously bbc.com is the most visited website. So I think that certainly for a big organisation like the BBC, it is adapting to this new world.
Now,
are you guys doing that too?
Now, you should be asking my management if you're doing that. Oh, sure, but we are doing it seriously. Now, because we're actually streaming this live, and we're also going to YouTube it. But that actually is where my concern is. Now, do you think street level eyewitnessing account will now begin to influence news reporting more than editorials at the top level? Do you think so in the future?
Undoubtedly. I think the fact that this phone in your hand has really revolutionized the way we gather news.
Yes.
So anything can happen in any part of the world, and there'll be somebody with a phone with, you know, an eyewitness account, basically. And I think that's really opened up the sources of information for people who work in the news media. I think that, you know, it's harder for people in power to say, look, you know, there was an election.
Conceal.
To conceal. So it's a very, very, you know, sunlight is a strong antiseptic, and this is a strong antiseptic because it really is harder to conceal. However, it also does come with some, you know, hidden problems, such as, you know, obviously fake news. And certainly, you know, again, at the BBC, there's a whole team of people, dozens and dozens of them, who are monitoring stuff that comes through on the internet. And so, you know, for example, I don't know, take a country like Syria, you might have a piece of video that's saying this is an atrocity that's being carried out by Syrian rebels or government forces or whatever. So, you know, we'll have a team of experts who speak Arabic who'll say, you know what, the accent isn't quite right, the number plates on the car are not Aleppo or whatever, the weather isn't right for that climate. So, you know, you need...
forensic.
You do need that kind of forensic thing. So, yes, it has opened up, you know, more sources, but you've also got to be more mindful that those sources may be bogus. Fake news. All worried about fake news.
Now that you have said that, you know, around here in Nigeria, virtually everything that we see, especially, well, social media, we think is photoshopped. You think
I could do with a bit of photoshopping now, you know. I've had a beautiful long week in Lagos, eaten too much, stayed up too late, chatting to people, that I could do with a bit of photoshopping. But anyway, yes, I know, it's, you know, the media, there's a tug of war between the media presenting reality as it is, and then, you know, the doctoring that goes on. Let us say that I sympathise with those people out there who want to do a bit of photoshopping. Sometimes you need it, but I think if it's used to distort and to mislead, then it's not right. But if it's just there to enhance and entertain, then it doesn't matter. If a, you know, Kim Kardashian lookalike or Kim Kardashian herself wants to, you know, change her silhouette or something, then that's her prerogative.
Are you in a way worried by the opinion by some people that the clouds of images, objects, and even opinions, shades of opinions that we have shared around the world are being controlled by very few people? Less than 1% of the world population? Are you worried? Do you think there's a truth to that? Who,
you mean that there are some media moguls?
Yes, who manipulate, I mean, as it were, the perceptions of people?
Yes, okay, look, you're asking something in a very polite way, and maybe if I just take that thought and develop it further within the context of Africa, if you are asking whether the international media has had a tendency to portray Africa and Africans in a certain way, and that has been the window, you know, through the world of seeing that, then yes, I think that is true, that we have had for so many years, you know, the international media being dominated and concentrated in the West. The proliferation of channels that we've seen from other parts of the world, you know, we now have news channels from all over the world, exactly, and people are getting access to that, then that has, I think, mitigated, you know, that effect. But still, the big beasts, the ones with the real huge global, you know, footprint, yeah, are still perhaps the Western ones. So I still think that we have a way to go in ensuring that how people see themselves and how people want to challenge the perceptions and the prejudices that perhaps still persist. We need to have a wider variety, a greater...
More than what we have.
Exactly,
right now.
more than we have. And I think, you know, there is a recognition, certainly at the BBC, that we do want to portray Africa in all its manifestations, and there has been a tendency for news, and news has that inherent quality built into it, that it will focus on the difficulties of life, be it in Africa, Asia, Middle East, Europe, or whatever. But now, you know, we are recognising that Africans have got many stories to tell in the cultural sector, in the business sector, in the social sector, and that we mustn't, you know, just look at it in a
beyond the
narrow way.
Of the difficult,
the coup, the war, the famine, and all that. Yeah.
Okay. Now, if, for instance, if you go to X-ray the Sustainable Development Goals, what do you think should be the compulsory things for the government and people of Africa to look into? What have you looked at that?
Yeah, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which of course, you know, succeeded the Millennium Development Goals.
Yes.
I mean, look, I think that they are right. The spirit is right. I worry sometimes that it's difficult to have 17 priorities, but if it comes down to, you know, really making sure that citizens have rights, have rights, have human rights, have social rights, so that they have, you know, proper shelter, have, you know, a good diet, and so on and so forth. Then, of course, the rights of citizens must be observed right across the board, and then obviously the Sustainable Development Goals went further than the MDGs by saying, you know, sustainable development is important, climate change, you know, the right to quality jobs, quality education. So, I mean, I think goals are good. It's good for us to have targets like that, by which we can measure how well a government is doing. Yeah, but progress is also important. So sometimes, even if a country hasn't met the target in the Sustainable Development Goals, if it's progress, making good progress, then that should be acknowledged. But I think that, you know, it is incumbent on governments to ensure the rights of their citizens in all its manifestations, human rights, social and, you know, civic rights, and so on and so forth.
But by broadening the goals to also include the participation, the fuller, better participation of the Western world, do you think that is also a good movement?
I mean, look, when it comes to Africa, I mean, I'm of the view that no country in history has been developed by outsiders. You know, that is a fact.
That is a reality.
That's a reality. Yeah, I mean, perhaps Germany after the Second World War with the Marshall Plan. But primarily, that is a fact. However, it does not mean that African countries cannot work in partnership with Western governments in all sorts of ways. But I think it's incumbent on Africans to be in the driving seat. And when it comes to funds, they can't look to Western governments to drive their own development. You've got to mobilise, you know, your domestic resources. Domestic resource mobilisation is very, very important. I remember Trevor Manuel, the former finance minister of South Africa, said, aid is spelt T-A-X, tax. In other words, Africans, you know, mobilise your own domestic resources, and you know, you've done wonderful things here in Nigeria.
Yes.
Your former state governor, you know, Fashola in Lagos, really increased the tax, you know, take-up. So I think that kind of approach is right. Africans have to look at themselves and working in partnership, but telling the international community that there has to be a fairer international economic order. For too long we've seen that the international economic system has been loaded against Africans, and so I think, you know, Africans have to be great advocates for themselves and say, we won't tolerate this state of affairs. Fair terms of trade and all the rest of it. Yeah.
Okay, but also Africa seems to have an eternal challenge, and that is a question again of is it corruption? Do you think it's just corruption or bad governance?
I think bad governance follows from the two. The two are inextricably linked. That corruption thrives through bad governance, and bad governance begets corruption. So really, you know, if you tackle governance and try to achieve good governance, then everything else should really flow from it. It's a very, very simple fact, you know. And good governance, there are lots of indicators that one can use, you know, the Mo Ibrahim Index for good governance. You know, my fellow Sudanese Mo Ibrahim, former telecom.
I hope I'm going to get him to be here one day and speak. Yeah, you'll tell him for me. Great.
I will pick up the phone and I will tell him to come and be interviewed for you. Yeah, no, so he's got this great Ibrahim Index of good governance, whereby, you know, he looks at how governments are doing, you know, the scores on education, on healthcare provision, on, you know, freedom of speech and so on. You know, in the UK, I was chair of something called Article 19 for many years, and Article 19, of course, is the 19th article in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is freedom of speech, the free flow of information. And I've always remembered that the Nobel Prize winning economist, the Indian-born economist Amartya Sen, said there has been no famine in any country where there is freedom of speech.
Say that again for our viewers again.
Yeah, there has been no famine in any country where there is freedom of speech, because it's a fundamental right. And as Kofi Annan said, you know, it's a cornerstone of democracy. So if you just think about it, you know, this is a Nobel Prize winning economist. He, you know, supported this with all his wonderful charts and so on. So it just simply means that if a people are free and are free to speak out and so on and so forth, then that by and large suggests that there is a free society and that there is, you know, no famine. So I think that you know, it is a fundamental right, which is why I, you know, was very happy being chair of Article 19 for many years. And
but there's something else again, Zainab, that well, that I'm a little bit worried about. But speaking about the media, social media this time around, are you disturbed by the broad spread of sexually explicit imagery?
Oh God, yeah, it's terrible. As the mother of 2 daughters, especially, I you know, do worry. I think that you know, the image that is presented sometimes of women on social media, it's really, you know, appalling, and the pornography that's available. Exactly. And you know, and you do worry, and you worry about predators, sexual predators, contacting young women, young girls on social media, and you know, it's like everything in life, isn't it? The internet is great, it's good in so many ways, but it's also, like everything else, also dangerous. It's like fire. Fire is a wonderful thing to have, but it has to be controlled, because it can also be very destructive.
Wow. Now, as a mother of 4, Zainab, are you in any way intrigued also by the fact that the world is getting to the stage where motherhood, you know, actually motherhood, a friend of mine describes this as the best job, as the greatest job in the world. That motherhood is either going to be proscribed or deleted, either by surrogacy or by the rainbow sexual orientation.
Not for us in Africa.
I know, I know, but
look, some women may take a conscious decision not to have a child, and that is their choice. That is their choice, and that is their decision. Some people sadly may want to have children, but nature has decreed that they are not able to have children. But for me personally, it was very important for me to have children, and I always say to my children, you know, my 4 best presents in life didn't come on my birthday, they came on your birthdays. Equal joint first, you know. And so for me, my role and identity as a mother, of course, is the most important thing. And people see me flying all around the world and say, oh, has she seen her children? But you know, I didn't start traveling until the youngest was about 10.
Wow.
And before that, and I travel in a way which is, you know, even filming for this history series, which we'll talk about in a while.
Yes.
You know, I was all over Africa, but I would try and just concentrate everything into a short span, because I didn't want to be away from my children. But they're older now, so actually the youngest was at boarding school through his own choice. It was a bit.
So motherhood, it's
important
and very rewarding.
Yeah, and if surrogacy is the only way that some people can become parents, then fair enough. And I'm delighted that women who wish to have children, or families, couples that wish to have children, have got, you know, various medical procedures that they can undergo in order to facilitate that for them. Yeah.
Okay, now, but parenting in the information age, how daunting is it now?
It is very difficult, isn't it? I mean, you know, because in the information age there's an information overload, and I think that from an educational point of view, and you know, I come from a family of educators, and it's very important for us education. Young people can conflate information with knowledge. And
please say that again for my viewers.
Yes, they can conflate information with knowledge, and also I think that you know, you've got to retain things in your mind. And I think that because everything is that, oh, I can just press a button and find out what, you know, what happened and when happened. Yeah. You know, I tell you a story. I was an undergraduate at Oxford University, and I went back a year or so ago and had dinner in one of the fine colleges there, All Souls. And I was we were sitting in the library having coffee and cake at the end. And I looked at this wonderful library that had been going on since, you know, for hundreds of years. And I said to one of the elderly professors who'd retired, who was a professor of English, and I said, what do you think about technology now that people get information at the press of a button? And he said, you know, I've spent my life gathering data and a collection of poems that mentioned the moon. And, you know, I had this huge repository of information in my head, and now you can just click a button and say poetry that has the moon in it. You get all this stuff. And I thought, did this man think that his life work, you know, was wasted and so on? But I thought not, actually, because he's got it in his head, you see, and he's thought about it. It's not just, you know, so I worry about young people not retaining information. This is the best computer that has ever been invented. Yes. And to date, it has never been bettered, and I doubt it will ever be bettered, the human brain. So I will say to young people, don't forget that, use it.
I like that. Now, but for parenting, I'm a little bit still worried, though. Is it fulfilling for you?
What, parenting?
Yes.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, my priorities, you know, now, in the past, in the future, always will be my 4 beloved children. I mean, you know, look, I'm an African. Family is everything to us. And my father, I'm sorry, sadly died last year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but my mother is with me, touch wood, and she's currently visiting Sudan, visiting family there. You know, I'm one of 6 children, touch wood. We are 3 boys and 3 girls. My parents were very blessed. My nephews and nieces, you know, we're a very close-knit.
And that is very African.
Very. Yeah. So
now, are you worried, Zainab, though, that some prevalences in Africa may seem to just say we are not human enough? I mean, look at child mortality, look at maternal mortality. We have the worst results in those areas.
Yeah, it is very, very sad that you know, a lack of adequate healthcare provision has meant that maternal health rate mortality rate for mothers is so much higher than it should be.
Yes.
You know, hemorrhaging, something that's very simple that they needn't die of. I mean, look, you know, we all know that African governments have to spend, I think it's 12 to 15% of their GDP on health, and to date, only a fraction of African governments dedicate that much money to their health spending, and we really, really must do that. You know, because I go back to, you know, it's a basic right of citizens to expect adequate healthcare provision from their governments.
And when there's freedom of speech, there's no famine. So when there's freedom of speech, of course, you may not have...
Yeah, freedom of speech and free flow of information, and also that, you know, speaking truth to power and saying we need hospitals, we need roads that will take us to the hospitals. But, you know, I think leaders in Africa now recognise that there is this huge infrastructural deficit, and I think that's very important. One of your great exports, Akin Adesina, who's the current president of the African Development Bank, has made that one of his top priorities, and they're trying to put billions in, because we know, I think the deficit is about $50 billion. About that or something like that. And you know, it is a continent-wide initiative, and I think it's absolutely critical that we power Africa, that we have roads in Africa. And
we have rails in Africa.
Yeah, he drums the message. And also intra-African trade is, you know, so low.
That used to be there, Trans-Sahara, centuries before.
Absolutely, and Africans don't trade with one another as much as, say, the Asians do. You know, intra-Asian trade, I think, is something like 25% of their total trade. Here in Africa, it's about 10% of intra-African trade. It's very, very low. You know, we need to start having... I'm a great Pan-Africanist.
That's great.
I'm a great Pan-Africanist.
That's great.
Absolutely, and I think that, in a sense, we've lost sight of the appeal of Pan-Africanism. You know, we had Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana, and Julius Nyerere in Tanzania, and Jomo Kenyatta, Leopold Senghor of Senegal. You know, these leaders who in the early 1960s, during that period of rapid decolonization in Africa, you know, they said, look, Pan-Africanism is the ways, as Jamal Abdel Nasser, you know, an Egyptian woman, married Kwame Nkrumah, and you know, they were great proponents of this, and the concept of negritude that was developed, you know, in Senegal and also by diaspora Africans in the Caribbean. You know, we need to get that. We need to get that. Yes, you know, modernity needn't be defined only as what happens in the West. You know, these thoughts of finding an African way of doing things is very, very important, and that's what I try to do through this history series, is to say that, you know, for too long there has been the view of looking at the world and at Africa, and as a great man, Patisa Nyati from Zimbabwe, said to me, you know, in this series, whom I interviewed, one of the experts, is the world is too complex to just be seen through the lens of just the view, and you won't understand Africa and the African phenomena if you do that. So that's why, you know, people might say, oh, it's just a history series or whatever, but it is also about Africans reclaiming their voice and reclaiming
their knowledge,
respect and knowledge and self-respect, because you know, for too long Africans have been told that their history has either been denigrated, written by outsiders, or they've been told they don't have any, and that's ironic because we have the longest history in the world, because it's where humans originated. Yes,
but Zainab, are you not worried that this perception, so this enduring, as it were, of the perception?
Great. And they have a tank too. Oh, that's a complete set. So this one, I don't need that because I'm small up top and large at the bottom, but this is for, you would wear something like this, right? Because this is, you said your body type is wedge.
Right, you're going to pull, this is going to pull and lift up.
Thank you, Pammy.
You're welcome.
Thank you. We love our Pammy, our fashionista. For more information, go to livingalife.com. And hey, up next, we put author Eric Metaxas on the spot recently when our toughest questions about God and the universe and everything else. He gave his answers to our little Carolyn, and his answers may surprise you. Stay with us.
For years, I have been wanting to communicate my faith to people who don't have the same faith. And I thought, what can I give them? And I was always looking for books, and almost every single book was imperfect in some serious way.
You've got everything you thought would make you happy. A promising career, plenty of friends, and a growing family. But life seems empty. Something's missing. Only God can bring real meaning to life. True happiness comes from knowing Him. Discover how God can change your life. Watch the 700 Club.
Healing, hope, restoration. Amazing stories of real people like you who have triumphed over tragedy. Watch Turning Point International and be inspired to reach your turning point.
It really ministers to the soul of man, and as a pastor you benefit a lot because people learn, and they learn how to cope with issues probably you don't even deal with in your sermons.
It's not reality TV, it's real life TV.
Wonder about things like, well, if God is good, why does He allow evil? Well, Carolyn had a chance to ask some hard questions and get a few answers. Take a look.
Be honest, we all have questions about God, but few of us get the answers we're looking for. Eric Metaxas understands, and that's why he's written this book, Everything You've Always Wanted to Know About God, but Were Afraid to Ask. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
This is a really funny, down-to-earth, real book about real questions that people have. What really prompted this?
Well, I think what prompted it was the absence of funny, down-to-earth, real books on the subject of, you know, the faith, what I believe, basically, the Christian faith. For years, I have been wanting to communicate my faith to people who don't have the same faith. And I thought, what can I give them? And I was always looking for books, and almost every single book was imperfect in some serious way that prevented me from giving it. I just thought, oh, it's just too embarrassing. I'm going to cringe if I give it to them, or they're going to feel like, you know, I'm inviting them to something weird, or it's kind of, there was sort of a heaviness and an awkwardness to it. And I thought, I want to write something that communicates the faith in a winsome way, that I could actually give it to somebody, and it's kind of like giving them a crazy book on UFOs or something, like, hey, this is interesting, read this. And they go, yeah, that is interesting. I've always wondered about that. And they would sort of read it without any, there's no baggage, basically. And so I thought, I want to do it in a Q&A format and just talk about everything, all the hard questions about what the Bible teaches and so on and so forth. I mean, not all, but the basics, like the real basics that everyone has. Everyone has the same questions. And I thought, I'm going to write it, and here it is.
Okay, here it is. I'm going to put you to the test then. I was sitting here thinking about you and this book, and it really is good. What would our viewers want to know? So I picked out some of the really toughest questions I thought that they would ask that I hear all the time, and I used to hear all the time as a newscaster. Why would a loving God allow suffering?
Right. I have no idea. Next question.
No, I
can't help you. Next. No, okay. Basically, I think it's really important for us as Christians, as believers, to speak the truth. And when I say that, I'm saying that sometimes there's a temptation with a hard question like that, say, well, I'll tell you why, and bang, bang, bang. The first answer to that question is to look at the person's heart and to say, like, I'm not going to tell you, you know, I'm not going to give you some easy answer. I share that frustration. I don't understand that. I know God loves me. I know the God of the Bible is infinitely loving, but I also know that there are things I don't understand. I don't understand why I have to suffer. Yeah. That's the first. So the first thing I would say is there's a mystery there. Then I would say, well, let me tell you about the God that I know. The God that I know is loving, and I know that if he set up the universe this way, it must have been for a good reason. And let me tell you a couple of things. I can tell you about free will. I can say that we live in a world where love is not, we're not robots. God created us with free will. And he basically said, you can love me or you can reject me, because love is a choice. And when the possibility exists to reject God, we allow evil and suffering and sin into the picture.
I was going to say, we heard this a lot after 9/11.
Yeah.
It's sort of different with this past year and a lot of the natural disasters we had on the Gulf Coast, but we heard this all the time with 9/11. Why would God allow this?
But even with tsunamis and things, to understand that we're living in an entire world is fallen, not just people. The entire world is fallen, and we have to understand that the God of the Bible grieves at that. He's not happy about that. He's not throwing tsunamis and earthquakes around, and you know, but that's a pagan idea of God. And so what I want to do is I want people to understand, no, the God of the Bible is not a pagan deity. He's not capricious. He's not Zeus. He is a loving God. And also the most important piece to this question is he's with us in the suffering. We don't understand it all, but we know that he's with us, and we know Scripture promises that he can make all things work together for good, even tragedies. He's with us in the middle of that, and he's doing something if we'll let him do it. And again, that's not a total answer, but that's the basic part. It starts a conversation.
Which, let me piggyback off of that, because another lie that's going around, another myth, is that all religions are the same.
Right.
It's all good, and it all kind of leads to the same path.
Right.
You hear that all the time.
Well, again, it's one of these complicated things. I think a lot of Christians would say, absolutely not, this is an evil religion, this is an evil religion, and Christianity is the only way. Basically, as a Christian, I realize that, yes, Jesus is God. So he's not just the only way to God, he is God.
And there's something that I need to... you addressed too. Is he the only way?
It's important to... See, what I think is that what Christians have done is they've removed the nuance from some of these things. There's a lot of nuance. There's a lot to talk about. Let's talk about it and kind of draw people into the conversation rather than simply saying yes, no, this is bad, this is good. Let's talk about it. I mean, for example, there's a lot of good in other religions. There's a lot of wisdom. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm going to become a Buddhist or become a... Why not? Because Jesus is the way to the Father. I know that, and that sounds, you know, arrogant and parochial and narrow and so on and so forth, and that you need to unpack that. There's a whole conversation there. But I don't want to, at the same time, say that every religion is evil or in other words, there are a lot of good people trapped in bad religious systems. They don't know how to get to God. But there's something there for them. Well, what we need to do is say, hey, there's something over here too, and also there's a God here who loves you, and you've never met him, you know?
Well, you know, there are so many questions to talk about. Those are the big ones, and these are great conversation starters.
There's nothing funny about those.
Nothing funny about those, and nothing really too funny about this one either, because a lot of people feel disenfranchised from God, separated from God, that another question you address, the God of the universe, has to be too busy to care about my little life.
Right. Yeah, well, that's fascinating too, because this is, I think, part of what I try to say in the book, and I say a heck of a lot, but is that we have most people have like a weird pagan idea of God, and they think of God as being, about 12 feet tall.
And define pagan. A lot of people don't understand.
Well, when I say pagan, I'm saying that they have an idea of God that has nothing to do with the God of the Bible. It's kind of like they think of God like he's some kind of like when we think of the Greek gods or the Roman gods, where we kind of think of God that way. And we make God really small. If God created the entire universe out of nothing in a moment's time, he's pretty capable of handling, of multitasking.
And of handling any problem that comes into our lives.
And if he loves me, he cares about every little thing in my life, not just the big things.
This is such a great book. Thank you. And once again, the book is called Everything You Always Wanted to Know About God, But Were Afraid to Ask. Eric Metaxas, this is a great way to just start a conversation with somebody.
That's the point.
So I appreciate you coming by and answering a couple of the questions.
It's totally my pleasure.
All right.
Thanks,
Eric.
Okay.
Isn't he a good guy?
He's great, and so many times when you have a friend who asks those questions, who doesn't have a personal relationship with Jesus, it's very difficult to, lay it all out in the line. So if it's a simple question and then here's the answer, and so many times I have to say, I don't have the answer. Well, obviously we know I don't have the answer, but God wrote us a love letter, and all the answers are in there, and if we would just read that, he would explain so much to your own heart about it.
And I love his approach that it's a conversation starter, because a lot of times when I was in news, we used to talk about this stuff all the time, and the point was we would talk. And sometimes we would just walk away and disagree. Well, I don't agree with that, but hey, we're still friends, and we can still work together. And that's what we need to be doing, instead of judging people and you're bad and I'm right.
Yeah, because with that, if you start bashing someone else,
without compromising on what we believe that Jesus is.
That's right.
God.
And they'll know we're Christians by our love, how we love them. So
very true.
Great true. Great.
Up next, Ronan Tynan graces our Living the Life studio with a rendition of a beautiful ballad you won't forget. Stay with us.
Yet all I want from this dark place is to have you here with me.
When Jachi was 2, we were playing games with him and I called his name loudly several times. But he did nothing. So I took him to the hospital where a doctor confirmed our greatest fear. Jachi was deaf. I worried so much about his future. There is not a sound that Jachi cannot hear. Now he can express himself very well.
These are the things you make possible when you partner with CBN. Thousands of people around the world begin new lives because you cared enough to give. To those of you who recently pledged to join the 700 Club, thank you. Your help will make a tremendous difference in so many lives, because when we all come together to help, miracles happen.
You've got everything you thought would make you happy. A promising career, plenty of friends, and a growing family. But life seems empty. Something's missing. Only God can bring real meaning to life. True happiness comes from knowing Him. Discover how God can change your life. Watch the 700 Club.
For anyone who's had to say a final farewell to someone they loved, Ronan Tynan captures this moment in his moving performance of the song Grace.
as we gather in the chapel here in old Kilmainham jail. I think about these past few weeks. Will they say we failed? From our school days they have told us we must yearn for liberty. Yet all I want from this dark place is to have you here with me. Oh, grace, just hold me in your arms and let this moment linger. They'll take me out at dawn and I will die. With all my love, I place this wedding ring upon your finger. There won't be time to share our love, for we must say goodbye. Now I know it's hard for you, my love, to ever understand the love I share for these brave men, the love for our dear land. When glory called me to his side down in the GPO, I had to leave my own bed. To him I had to go. Oh, grace, just hold me in your arms and let this moment linger. They'll take me out at dawn and I will die. With all my love, I place this wedding ring upon your finger. There won't be time to share our love, for we must say goodbye.
Healing, hope, restoration. Amazing stories of real people like you who have triumphed over tragedy. Watch Turning Point International and be inspired to reach your turning point.
It really ministers to the soul of man, and as a pastor you benefit a lot because people learn and they learn how to cope with issues probably you don't even deal with in your sermons.
It's not reality TV, it's real life TV.
Inside every child is a hero, a leader, a friend to others, someone who helps out, who does the right thing, who dreams of what they can be, but they
Mango is a juicy stone fruit belonging to the genus Mangifera, consisting of numerous tropical fruiting trees cultivated mostly for edible fruits. The majority of its species are found in nature as wild mangoes. The mango is native to South and Southeast Asia, from where it has been distributed worldwide to become one of the most cultivated fruits in the tropics.
You see, every crop is adapted to a particular environment. All crops, all agricultural crops, that is why you will find in one region you discover you have more of a particular crop than other crops. So the mango is more adapted to the tropics than any other tree crop. And the mango is also like a drought-tolerant crop that can withstand harsh weather conditions. And that is why you'd see that you can grow mango in virtually all types of soil, except maybe on rocky soils. But no matter how the poor condition of that soil, as long as the farmer is able to dig a hole, the desired hole, and plant the mango at the right time, he will still harvest fruits on the mango.
Mango can thrive best or can do in any type of soil. So you'll notice that some farmers, if they try maize in their field and it doesn't grow well, if they plant mango, mango will carry out, mango will take, and it will do well.
Mangoes came to Nigeria in the 20th century. As at 2006, Nigeria occupies the 8th position in the world ranking of mangoes producing countries.
And Nigeria is one of the producing country of mango, exactly. Because we have, if you notice, we have so many orchardists, that is farmers growing mango in our country, Nigeria. So we can say Nigeria is among the most producing country of mango. We produce a lot of mango.
Mango grows and fruit best on a deep, well-drained, fertile soil.
First of all, you need a sandy, a loamy soil for you to start a mango farm. After then, you need to have a correct seedlings in which you are going to plant. How you will get the seedling, you will go to Ministry of Agriculture or Kaduna State Agri Development Project. And after then, if you get the correct seedlings, what you are expected to do, you have to dig a hole 10 centimeter away from, 10 centimeter each from the row. Then you have to apply this local manure, like all these bad litters and organic manure. You have to apply. At times you need to apply this termicide, insecticide for the control of termites. So after then, you plant your seedlings. Then you apply. You need to spray this insecticide. After then, you need some traps like other ones there, because they are traps for insecticide.
After planting the mango, if it matures, they will do grafted. The grafted one from 6 months to 1 year to start producing seed. Unlike natural one. Natural one stay for more, even from 10 years upward before producing seed. These are grafted one is very, very economical because it normally matures in time for consumption. That is why people even prefer the grafted one.
Mango fruits have different sizes, colors, and shapes. The mango comes in different varieties such as the Alfonso Thuzil, Julie, Palmer, Kate, Lippin, Sagan, Edward, Haven, and many others. Mangoes are also grown in the northern part of Nigeria.
We have different types of mango. We have improved mangoes, and we also have export quality mangoes. And at the same time, we also have local varieties that you can easily see around with farmers. But what we promote here as an organization, we promote improved varieties, and some of those varieties are like Peter, Peach, Julie, Juice, rest of them. These are some of the improved varieties. I just mentioned a few of them. But the local varieties are mostly known by local names. within the localities in which those mangoes are produced. Some of those local varieties, we know the one with, if you are eating it, you have roots inside it, it's a local variety. And mostly people recognize it by calling it mango mejija, that is with the fruits. With that, the fruit of that mango, you can easily recognize it. We also have mango like Baking Aku. That one does not have a lot of rope inside it, but it's more softer. But when you come to the improved varieties, as I have mentioned, I said Peter is a large fruit mango. If you just take one is just enough for a diet.
The mango year has 2 seasons, one in the spring and the other in the fall. The 2 seasons overlap.
Before the onset of the season, maybe between October, November and December, you discover some of this mango will start flowering. And when they start flowering at that time, they will start also fruiting. By around March, April, the following year, you will discover that the fruits, the flowers from December time to that period have already reached a point of maturing, and they will start harvesting the mango. And at the same time, you equally discover on the same plant, on the same tree, you will see another branch will start flowering again. While fruits are on the mango tree, you will still discover flowers coming up. And those flowers come much later, maybe between April and March, and by June, July, and you discover you have another set of fruits again. And this one is mostly with the improved varieties of mango. But for the local varieties, they come a little bit earlier, and that is why you have them between the range of March and April. You see a lot of local varieties around.
Very good. Mango, in fact, it has a lot of overlapping. If you look at it, the normal natural species, it normally started from early May, producing fruit, to June. Unlike the grafted one, we can have it any season, like even bought in the dry and the rainy season.
Mango trees are deep-rooted symmetrical evergreens that attain height of 90 feet and width of 80 feet. Mango trees have simple alternate lanceolate leaves that are 12 to 16 inches in length and yellow-green, purple or copper in color when young. Mature leaves are leathery, glossy and deep green in color. Mangoes may very well be the king of all fruits. They fight cancer, alkalize the body, aids in weight loss, and help digestions.
It also helps in bone growth, development and reproduction. It helps especially the children, the adult and age, all this category of people, it helps. It also helps in cell division and cell differentiation. It also helps our body to resist some infection and diseases.
Mangoes has a lot of health benefits for the human body, in the sense that it has a lot of multivitamins, especially vitamin C, which helps very much in the immune system of the body. So it does help in detoxification. It's an antioxidant, and it helps in detoxification of cells, as well as in building it helps the immune system to build itself.
People are of the opinion that when rain does not fall on the mango tree, the fruit may have an after effect when eaten. Is this true, or is it a myth?
No, it's just a myth to think that if you ate the fruit before the first rains, that it will cause some diseases or some problems. No, the only thing it could cause is that if for rain without a rain, the first rain kind of, let's say, washes the mango
fruits. But Albert, whatever you said and done, whenever you pluck a mango fruit or you pick it up from the ground, you should wash it perfectly well before you consume it. The fact that you took the mango before the first rains does not have any bearing on whether it will cause diseases or not.
Raw mango consists of about 81.7% water, 17% carbohydrate, 0.5% protein, 0.3% fat, and 0.5% ash. A 100-gram serving of raw mango has 65% calories and about half the vitamin C found in oranges. Mango contains more vitamin A than most fruits.
Mango fruits have very high vitamins in it, and it has the function in our body or in our system for good vision. It's very good for our eyesight, especially the children, the aged, the adult, and it's very good for the eyes. And it also has the ability to repair our skin. It has the ability to make our skin look fine, look nice and healthier.
Being a perishable fruit, how can it be stored?
We keep it inside room so that rain will not spoil it. But if you keep it outside, rain is hitting it, it can spoil at any time. But if you make where to keep it safely, no rain, nothing, it will go fine.
When the weather is hot, then the mango will spoil. We don't use this sack. We call it buhu or ashesha. We don't use it to plug mango and bring it home. Because if you use it, the mango will spoil. Like this one, we do use basket. You see the one that will bring it inside basket. And you see the one that will put it inside sack. And they are the same thing. So you see the difference. This one is more fresher than this one. And another thing, if like it's raining like this during rainy season, we don't go farm when it's raining. Even if we go farm when it's raining, we didn't plug mango, we don't use to work. We will wait until the rain is over. Because if you plug it inside rain, the mango won't be fresh. It will look very dirty and somehow like that.
Mango could be stored in a good basket or crates to avoid it being decayed. Mango could be mango could also be stored in a well-ventilated structure. So if you have your cool or your structure with a proper ventilation with good distance, you spray dry grass, then you put your mango. With proper ventilation, mango could be stored in some days before it can be taken to the buyer.
It can be harvested, sort the matured ones, clean, peel and dry under hygienic environment. And it can be, after drying it, you can store it maybe in the polythene bags or airtight containers for future use. You can powder it, use it in your pap, use it in tea. You can take it direct like that and you can surely get your vitamin A.
Are there any challenges faced by mango farmers?
Well, the two most challenges are wind and insect, especially during the winter periods when the mango started fruiting. You realize that the wind will come and blow all the fruiting. So after then, it will take too much time before the mango will start producing again. That's one of our challenges. Second is about the insects. Mango need to be sprayed each after 2 weeks. You need to spray. So lack of chemicals and other equipment affect us a lot in mango productions. Well, I will advise people to go on mango business because it's very good business. As you can see here in this our farm, every blessed week we rise like 15 to 16,000 every blessed week. So honestly, I think it's a very good business. that I will encourage more people, especially the youths, to engage in this mango business.
Fresh mango cubes are great additions to salads, but today you will be learning how to make mango milkshake.
Hello, today on this segment of Food Today, we are going to be making mango milkshake. As you all know, mango can be used for fruit salad or even juice, but today we are making milkshake because it's something that people don't usually do, and it's really nutritious and healthy and excellent, especially if you have children. To make mango milkshake, we'll need the following ingredients: your mango peeled and cut into cubes, our milk, some crushed ice, some cubed mango for our garnishing. You also need your cashew nuts for garnishing and sugar to taste. In a blender, add your cubed mango,
we will definitely get back. Once again, thank you for all the messages.
Thank you for being on the show today.
Pleasure is mine as always.
All right. That is how far we can go on the program today. On behalf of the entire crew, the director, the cameraman, and the audio lady, the lady on the console, we call her audio lady. Thank you also to you out there for keeping a date with us. Football Classic is the best on NTA, and NTA is the largest TV network in Africa. You can't beat the rich. Until next week, I say remain blessed, and don't ever stop watching NTA, because NTA is the best.
NTA2Lagos Network Center. Let us plant a tree today. Make the rain fall, keep the desert away. Let us plant a tree today. Make the rain fall, keep erosion away.
The climate's changing because of burning oil and cutting down forests. Climate change will give our children floods, hunger, drought, and poverty. Trees give oxygen, rain, and shelter. Let's make Nigeria green again and plant trees to secure our children's future.
Let us plant a tree today.
NTA2Lagos Network Center brings you broadcast service wherever and whenever through our social media platforms, now live on just a click away. Global news, sports, business reports, politics, issues, events and happenings around.
ولا استجاز نتقمت جاوستال ونتقمت على هرنا የሰርጀለትና ጥዋት ቀኑ ሙሉ እዚያው ሲደገስ ሲጨፈር ዋለ ቀኑን እዚያው ድግስ ዋለ ኋላ ማታ ላይ ምሽት ወደዚያ ስነድ ፈረስ ነው ፈረሳ ሁሉኝም አዝሎኝ ወሰዱኝ ልጥራስል ሲደበደበኝ ምን ሲለኝ አማቴቱ ደግሞ ምን አበሽ አብረሽ ማተኝ ስትለኝ እየተነሳው በቦታው በዳሪም ስወጣ ተጫጉረው እንደም ወጥቼ ሲመታ ጊዜ ጠፍቼ ጀነዋል ተመጀመሪያ ቀን ጀምሮ ያው እኔ ደስተኛ አይደለሁም ማላውቅም እዚያ ደስተኛ አይደለሁም ያው ሳለቅስ ነው የሰነበት ማለት እናት አባቴ ጠፍቼ ሰደሙ አንቺ ምን አባሽ ተቀመጭ እንጂ የጋላሞታ ልጅም የቁም ቀር ልጅ ብለሽ ምታሰድኝ ምን አባሽ ነው እያሉ እያባረሩ ሲሰድ እናት አባቴ ሲሸኙ ታባለ ጋር ሆነና ሲሸኙ እኔም ይዘው ታባሩኝና እነሱም እዚያም እነዚህም ታሰቃዩኝና እንግዲህ ያለና በዛፉ በሚኑ ሰቀልና ሳድር ልጅ በልቶኝ ነበር። አንድ ጊዜም በዛፉ ተሰቅዬ አድሬ አሁን ዛን ጊዜ እናንተ እንግዲህ ታደርሽማ ከንቱ ልጅ በጅብል ትበላ የለ ጉዳት ላገኛታ ይላልና መልሶ አመጣኝ።
እናቴ ዝም ብላ ምንም ነገር የላትም። ከዛ መሬቷን አከራየችና ጥጃ እየጠበቀች አስተምሪ ብላት እምቢ አለች። አስተምራ ቢሆን አሪፍ ነበር። ሴት ላይ ኖርኝ አስተምራታለሁ አልጥራትም።
ዛሬ ሰው ሁላ ሲዳር ሲጎራርስ እጅለሽ ተጊዞ ሲሄድ በጣም ቀናለሁ።
የኔንማ እንድታየው አልፈልግም። የኔን ስቅይት እሷ እንድታየው አልፈልግም። እሷ እንደገና ተደስታ እንድትኖር ነው የምፈልግ። የኔው ስቅይት ይበቃል ያው ነው።
Welcome back. I will read a poem to us that is indicative of how hurtful child marriage can be. I am Hafsatu, and I married him for his promises. Those promises he made me, those promises he made us. No, not the vows. These were an addendum to the for richer or poorer, for better or worse. How could I say no to his proposal and yes to the promises? They were not mutually exclusive. They were a package deal. Allow me to explain. So Papa needed dialysis, Mama surgery. Ibrahim, Nas and Waziri were exhausted, tired of being on the list of students who had not paid school fees. Last week, Waziri walked in front of the assembly as soon as the teacher made announcements came forward. So I had to say yes to him, but to his promises. My promise was me, myself, my life, my childhood, my body. As Mama, Papa, Ibrahim, Nas, Waziri said yes, all I had to do was turn 11 and move into the compound with the two wives before me. I would relate with Mariam, the senior wife. After all, her first child and I were the same age.
Another one, so it should be an exciting year. Kill You Softly was produced by, or is produced by Mastercraft. And when we created the song first quarter of last year, we both felt that we needed a collaboration, a feature on the song. Kind of, sometimes we need a feature to take the song to the maximum, what have you. So we decided on a couple of people, but Sarkodie was the conclusion. So Sarkodie had an extremely busy year last year, so to get Sarkodie in one place was very difficult. But we were able to do that towards the end of the year, so we had to go to Ghana to shoot the video with Sarkodie. Big up Sarkodie, really did a good job on the record, and he was supportive of the whole process in bringing that song to life.
Gonna keep it G. When it began and I judge, you know how it's gonna be.
So when you shoot a video, you have an idea of what you're trying to capture, what you're trying to sell to people, So with Killing Me Softly, we could only shoot in Ghana because Sarkodie couldn't be in Ghana because he was very busy. So to shoot a nice video, we look at things like we need a really nice location that people will look at and be like, wow, we need a nice supporting cast, which is the video victim. you know, some people are still calling me to introduce them to video victims, but that's cool too. And yeah, so when you're putting these things together, you're hoping that, you know, people will like the finished product. And also you need a good director that can capture your vision well, and who can execute. You know, so Max did a great job. You know, shout out to Max as well.